And welcome on to the Accent Training Podcast, Adrian. Tell me about yourself and what are you doing out there?
My name is Adrian. I'm an accent coach. I help people sound more native, less foreign and more native. That's what they want, and just help them be more confident. I studied linguistics, and I really like languages, and specifically, I like sounds and how they interact, like the phonetics and the phonology. I kind of I know a bunch of languages. Like I'm able to have good conversation, interesting conversation in maybe 7 or 8. So that's like English in this order, like English, Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, French, and maybe Portuguese, and then Polish, and then Russian. And yeah, no, I like seeing how the languages differ from English, and that helps me teach my students because I know what problems they like students of those linguistic backgrounds might have, and how I can help them understand like how English sounds and help them create those sounds in the right places. But why am I in Latvia right now? So I work online. We both work online, and I just in addition to liking languages, I like different cultures. And one of my life goals is to visit all the countries in the world. And I'm currently the past couple months, I've been in the Baltics and Nordics, and I've never been to Northern Europe. So last month I was in Sweden, and now this month I'm in Latvia. And then I'm going to go to Finland for a bit as well after this. But no, when I study, I mean, when I travel, I can also experience like how people locally how they speak, and now I know what a Swedish accent sounds like, and the interesting features that they have over there. And then I get to practice my Russian here while in Latvia, because a lot of people speak Russian as well as Latvian.
Did you speak much Swedish going
Oh,
there?
no. I spoke very little, but like I started to see similarities because like
Uh,
a lot of well, let's see. With the Swedish accent, I realized quite soon that they did not have a z sound, and I looked online and they did not have a z sound. So usually they speak fairly well, and as a Germanic language like Swedish, they have those patakas that like are quite difficult for speakers of like Romance languages or Slavic languages. So they have no problem saying things like talk and like pet cat, but then they can't say things like dogs. They say like dogs, and then they say um I like jazz music or something like that. Or if they don't know how to pronounce the j, they might say yeah, because the j is pronounced like a yeah. They might say yes instead of like jazz, but they don't have z. So they pronounce like a z sound. But I did not know too much about Swedish, but I knew a few things. Yeah.
it's like a lot of different languages have that difficulty not voicing the S. Do you have any tips for people who are listening right now on how they could project their voice a little more, getting that
Oh yeah.
Z there?
I tell them, imagine there's a bee. What sound does it make, or fly? And it's like zzz, right? So they can do that. They can actually do that. And I'm like, that's the sound in English. And so when we see things that have like a z, the letter Z in English, it's a z sound, just like a bee. So that helps them with that. Or with the v sound, I tell them, it's kind of like the sound that the motorcycle makes. You go like vroom, vroom, and then they can do it that way usually. Of course, if it doesn't work, then I can go through the technicalities, like where to place your tongue, your articulators, and then like go through the how the vocal cords vibrate, so you can check that you're actually saying it correctly. But like usually, I like to not reinvent the wheel. So if you are able to say the sound in certain situations, like maybe imitating the sound of something in nature, like a bee or like a motorcycle, or if you have that in your native tongue but you didn't know that it's the same sound in English, then I'll be like, oh, you have this word in your language, and it has the same sound in this situation as the sound we're working on today, and just do that, but like in English. So I try not to reinvent the wheel if possible, but I can help them get through the the technicalities.
like you're taking what they can do and just like, all right, now let's reinforce that in this, American context, in the American flow. So awesome. I take a similar approach. I don't use quite the same like imagery, but I like that brings, something cool to the table there. That's awesome. Nice. Do you do that for like, different sounds? Do you usually try to associate it with something that's, like you said, something from nature, something that's more familiar to them?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a shortcut and they already are able to do that sound in certain situations, then I'll try to use that. So, for example, with Russian speakers, when I try to teach them the a sound, as not like a basic phoneme in Russian. You have a, right? But they do have a as an allophone of a in certain situations. So, for example, the word for five in Russian is pять, and the word for fifth is more typical пятый, and it has an a sound. However, so the a phoneme, and maybe I'm not sure if the listeners know what phonemes are. Maybe you have talked about it in your podcast, but a phoneme is a basic like mental unit of a sound, a mental concept of a sound. But it can change slightly in different like phonetic contexts, or different words will have slightly different variations of that meaningful sound unit. So the phoneme is that basic default, and then the allophones are the kind of slight variations of that default. And like the Russian a basic default phoneme it has an allophone of a when you have certain sounds before and after it. So these are called soft sounds. They're kind of they call them soft sounds in Slavic linguistics, but soft sounds are basically the sounds that are what's it called? They're palatalized, and so what that means is your tongue is near the roof of the mouth, and it gets this kind of y sound, and that's why with the Russian accent they always have these. You think of it as having things like saying, "Oh, I moved to the city," like this. Instead of like city, they say city, or they say, "That's for me," instead of like me, right? So it's kind of a y sound there. Anyway, so for the sound five, for the sound in the word, in the Russian word five, that you get a p sound and a t sound, which are kind of palatalized, and that forces the a sound to be pushed forward into a, so they end up saying that. However, I asked them to compare that to the Russian word for fifth, which is пятый, and so that one doesn't have a because the sound after it is not palatalized. So they compare пятый and пять, and then I get them to take that a in пять and like isolate it, and slowly they gain the ability to say it by itself without the sounds before and after it, and then I just get them to use that in English. Yeah, that's the basic idea of like using knowledge and muscle memory that they already have, but like using it in a different way.
Wow, I love it. You get into so many fine details of how you explain things, but it's very fluid and easy. You must be a wonderful teacher. That's awesome.
I try. I hope I am. I'm not sure.
No,
Every day.
you take something that's tough and it's like, you're saying palatal sounds, but then you immediately start giving examples and it's like, oh, it makes sense. It follows along. You can follow it easy. It's really cool. Anyway, that's what I'm saying.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, I think I read a lot, and one of the things about communication is that you want to speak in the way that people understand, so you can communicate better. And so like it's similar to how I teach. Like if the student already has that sound, why not use that sound that they already know how to do, but just apply it in other places, like I said with the a sound, they already know it, so you don't have to. You're talking from the same. You're in the same. You have the same understanding, shared understanding there. So yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's all about communication.
yes. And speaking, like you said that you speak Russian, and I saw stuff before, like a lot of just what I've noticed of what you put up online is, speaking towards Polish speakers
Oh
with
yeah.
their accent. Yeah, I'm just curious, like, would you say that you typically work with Slavic languages, or do you like working with, what's your style of doing things?
Yeah, no, I like Slavic languages. I really enjoy learning them. I I'm often in Poland. It's like my third home. I'm originally from Hong Kong. I'm not sure if I said that earlier, but yeah, I'm originally from Hong Kong, but my dad's from the U.S. My mother's from Hong Kong. Um, but all my family, my relatives are in the northeast of the U.S. And then so I'm often in Hong Kong and in New York, but recently I've been living in Poland for almost like 2 years or so. And I don't know, I just like Slavic languages. Polish and Russian are quite different sounding. They're actually yeah, they're really different sounding, but like structurally they're kind of similar with the grammar and words. But they're probably one of the most different Slavic languages from each other. But most Slavic languages are very similar. But no, I like Slavic languages, and I do think that's kind of like sort of a niche for me. Yeah, I like Slavic languages. I also teach Chinese speakers because I mean I'm ethnically Chinese. I speak some types of Chinese, and then of course I do know Romance languages, but I feel like that's pretty popular, and I can do it. It's just not as much of a passion for me as with Slavic languages. But I know all the basic details of like how sounds change in Spanish and why like Spanish speakers actually do have a the sound like we have in English in words like dedo, where the second D is not the same as the first D. It's not dedo, it's like dedo, or bebida. It changes a bit, but yeah, no, I like Slavic languages a lot.
Wow, nice. Yeah, now it's cool actually that when you start pointing it out like that, it made me even reflect. And I was like, you know what? I mostly work with Romance languages. Like, just same thing as you, just from a different perspective. I'm like, right now I've got good amount of Italian, Spanish speaking, Portuguese, French. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, interesting. And
Yeah, a lot of like my biggest group of students are Russian speakers and then Mandarin speakers, but I have a really big number of Polish speakers that come to me especially because I speak Polish. Um, and like almost all of them have mentioned, oh, I chose you because you speak Polish. And yeah, I'm very familiar with the Polish accent. I'm actually, so, a funny story is that one of my side quests, one of my side goals is I kind of want to learn how to speak English in a Polish accent. I want to like learn to be able to, imitate a Polish accent, which is quite different from a Russian accent, and not many people know of it, which is why I like it, because it's like it's more niche, and people don't know much about it. But yeah.
you said that you're looking to travel the world. You
Yep.
want to get to every country. What number are you at so far? How far have you gotten on your journey?
So I think according to, well, I track it with one of these traveling apps, and it says 76, but I think if it doesn't include like if it only includes UN recognized countries, then it's like 66 or something. Because it includes things like, includes Taiwan, Hong Kong, and then like it has, I don't know why it counts Gibraltar as one, and Kosovo, but I've been to a lot of these smaller places that are, not definitely a country, but like, so either between 66 and 76. Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. Okay. And what would you say, or where have you had, the best experiences, and what countries did you kind of want to just get out of there? Go on to the next one. I'm curious to know.
Okay. Went to Georgia, which it was good for a couple of weeks, but and it's quite pretty, but it was basically all Georgian food, and I can't handle that much cheese. I can eat a certain amount of cheese, but after some time, it gets like I get a stomach ache, right? And it's all Georgian food, which is great, but like not every day. So I actually left my Airbnb like 10 days early. So I spent 10 extra days worth of money and gave it to the host without actually like staying there, but like it was already paid. But I liked it, but I just couldn't stay the entire like 5 weeks. I really enjoyed Portugal. I really enjoyed Portugal. It was really beautiful. I learned some Portuguese, and I like the European Portuguese accent. It's really it's complicated. It's very complicated because they drop all their vowels, and I like complicated sounding like languages, and I like when there's a lot of sound changes, phonological changes. With European Portuguese, it's a lot harder to understand than Brazilian Portuguese. Brazilian Portuguese is kind of like, you can sort of, you look at the word, I mean, you can hear that they do pronounce almost all of the vowels there in Brazilian Portuguese. But in European Portuguese, like, for example, with the word different in Brazilian Portuguese, it's like diferente. And in European Portuguese, it's like kind of different, right? Or excellent, I think in Brazilian Portuguese is like excelente, and then in European Portuguese is like excelente, So they kind of drop all their vowels, and I like that because it makes it tougher, and I like challenges.
That's okay, like it's something I've been curious of. Is there a difference between the Brazilian and European? I mean, I knew that there has to be some difference, but wow, okay.
A huge difference, actually. I don't think they can actually. It's very hard for Brazilians to understand European Portuguese accents. Allegedly, that's what I've read online. But I can understand why, because, for example, at one point I heard in Portugal someone asked for the check to be separated. They said "sprado, sprado," but like in Brazilian Portuguese, it's separado, right? It's really clear. Yeah, or words like príncipe. Príncipe is like príncipe in like Brazilian Portuguese, like a prince. It's príncipe, but in European Portuguese, just príncipe. Príncipe.
Real shorten those vowels and
Drop all
stronger.
those vowels. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. That's cool. So, okay. Have you met many Brazilian Portuguese speakers? Like, have you, spoken with them like in Portuguese or anything? Or I mean, in general?
I was there in Brazil for a month and a half earlier this year. I improved my Portuguese a lot, so I think I speak it because a lot of people there didn't speak English, so I spoke Portuguese mostly. Although I spoke it with a European accent because I learned Brazilian. I mean, no, I learned Portuguese, European Portuguese, not Brazilian Portuguese. But I'm not that good at it, and I probably don't speak that fast either. So I think I was understandable to them. Yeah.
Enough to survive. For 6 weeks. That's not that's no short time. That's like it's a little bit daunting, honestly. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. And so we do briefly got to get to wrapping things up shortly, but I'd love to know, because I know you've got, like, you're a course creator. I've seen stuff like you make videos when you're making courses, and I know that you've got a lot to offer. And you have totally, like, for me, it's like you are really good. I mean, people are listening to you right now, and if there's people listening who, I do have actually lots of listeners in Eastern Europe, Russian, from all over the place, Ukrainian, everywhere. Anyway, if they want to get a hold of you, or if they want to find out how can you, take on these difficulties with the approach of someone who is, kind of the expert when it comes to teaching Russians the American accent, what can they look into to find you?
So people can find me on my website, accentamazing.com, and my social media. All my handles are like accent amazing because I make your accent amazing. So you can find me there. I have a free mini email course. If you give me your email in which you can access on accentamazing.com/start. And I'm trying to get better at making content. So that's my goal this year: making more content, sending out emails, and I also do have, specifically for speakers of Russian and other Eastern Slavic languages, a video course, American English for American accent for speakers of Russian, which is one of my two courses. The other one is just more general. It's just complete English pronunciation. But the complete English pronunciation course is it's more focused, it's more general, and it helps people sound less foreign, and also, more importantly, more confident in their pronunciation, because it works on the phonemes of English, that are tough, such as like the vowels. Whereas the American accent for speakers of Russian course is a little bit more advanced. It helps you sound more like a native speaker, and has specific things that are catered towards speakers of Russian and other Eastern Slavic languages. Like, for example, the palatalization, the soft sounds of making things, like how they always say things like team, my business team, instead of like my business team, or they say I see instead of I see, or they say or little tips like how English never has an I at the end, whereas Russian often doesn't have an E at the end. And so when Russian speakers say things like maybe, they don't say like how we say maybe, they say maybe, maybe I'll go to the city, or like because in Russian, thing like the E sound at the end becomes I. So little tips like that are really catered towards speakers of Russian are in my course. And it's just it's a result of my passion for Slavic languages and understanding how languages differ in their sound systems. But yeah, you can find me on accentamazing.com or any of the socials, Accent Amazing.
Russian speakers or Eastern, Slavic language speakers, you've heard it from this man himself. There are difficulties that you have that a French speaker doesn't have, or that a German or whatever Spanish speaker doesn't have. And so it is true. If you can find an accent course that is specific for your needs, then you want to, if you want the hardest hitting stuff that's going to show you the most results and the cleanest sounding development, then, hey, check out Adrian's stuff. Like I think that's awesome. That is really cool. Nice.
Thanks. Yeah. I really enjoy it. I want to make more courses as well, but like I'm trying to make more content. I want to make something for Polish speakers as well. They are slightly different from it's a Western Slavic language, so it's slightly different from Eastern Slavic languages. But yeah, that's in the works. I'll be working on that for the next year or so.
It's non-stop work, eh? The course building. It's like recording, editing. You realize I don't like how I did this, or you change up your style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But luckily, I love it. I love languages. It's like my passion. I think about it all the time. When I'm with my friends, sometimes I just like tell them random facts. Like, did you know that the Spanish version, the Spanish cognate of James from English is Diego? Did you know that?
No, wouldn't it be Jaime?
No, I don't think so. People think it's that, but etymologically speaking, it's actually Diego, because both names came from Hebrew Yaakov, which is like Jacob, right? Jacob became Jacobus in Latin, and then Jacobus became in French it became Jacom, which became Jem, which became James, and then Jacobus in Latin became Iago, which became, like, when you have Santiago, you have Tiago, and then you get Diego. And so etymologically speaking, they're actually originally from the same source, which is Yaakov.
And who knows? I mean, it could even be James is then, kind of a return. Like maybe that's a modern Jaime could even. I'm just guessing. I'm just making stuff up. You're giving facts. I'm just making it up. But I'm saying it could be kind of a return now to Spanish. Like now you've got kind of two Jameses. You got Diego and Jaime. Like I'm saying, Jaime could be a modern Latin representation of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that happens as
Just
well.
making
I
that
don't
part
know.
up.
I don't know about Jaime. It could be, but I like spitting random facts like the
Yeah.
Diego is etymologically related to James and Jacob. But we do have examples of that in English. For example, a lot of the words that have ska and sh in English are etymologically related. So, for example, the ska version is the Nordic language. So words like fisk in Nordic languages or Scandinavian languages, they're cognate with fish. So fish and fisk, and scatter and shatter are related, and shirt and skirt are related, and they're all because when we first borrowed the ska words, they eventually became sh in English, and then we reborrowed the old words. So we borrowed like skirt and became shirt, and then we reborrowed skirt from the Vikings, I guess. I'm not sure of the exact the date ranges, but like they're actually the same word but borrowed at different times. So this happens all of the time in different languages as well. In Japanese, for example, it borrowed Chinese words that like the word Ming in Chinese was borrowed as Mei at some point, and then later it was reborrowed as Myo in Japanese. So they have various versions of the same word, but with different pronunciations and slightly different meanings. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. It's so the history, like languages and history go hand in hand with
Yeah.
each other. I'm more of a history nerd. I love languages, but
Yeah.
if I'm big on history. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's I know, of course, between China, Japan, and Korea, you've got hundreds of years of culture, thousands, I
And
suppose.
Vietnam as well.
Cultural.
Vietnam has a lot of Chinese words, Vietnamese. So
Oh,
yeah. When I
oh,
used to speak Korean better, whenever I didn't know like how to say a Korean word, I'd take the Cantonese word and then like have put it through some sound changes, and then you get the Korean word, and it worked like 80% of the time. Yeah,
wow.
like Cantonese Hawk Sang and Hawk Hao, like student and school would be 학생 and 학교 in Korean, or words like north, south, east, west is like you get 동, nam, sai, bắc, and you get tung, nam, so, pu in Korean.
Oh, so it's the inflection there is different in the vowels. And the
Yeah, but
projection.
it's systematically different because I know that like historically in historical linguistics, you can follow that there are certain patterns that how the language has shifted and how the vowels shifted. So that's why I can guess it most of the time. A lot of words that have e in Cantonese have ya or ah in Korean. So, for example, um, let's see, what's a good example? Yeah. Oh, so the name for Beijing is Bắc and then if you were to read that in the Korean pronunciation, they don't actually use this. They just transcribe, like they just use the phonetic sound now. But if you were to use the etymologically correct sounds in Korean, it would be Pokgyong. So instead of king, it becomes gyong. And then you have sick is beng, and then in Korean it's pyong, and it's a
Oh,
yong sound. And uh, uh, tin, which is sky, is chon. So it
oh,
all goes from e to ya in Korean, and it's like a systematic sort of change, which allows me to guess what the sounds are. And systems are. I teach via systems a lot because I'm like, oh, in if you speak Russian, your phonological systems that you probably can give, you will say e as I at the end of a word, but in English we don't say sitye or maybe. We'll say maybe, and all our tense vowels like e. It's not really like e. It's like e, and that's a systematic thing. And then this is why like constraints in English, which is kind of a systematic. Well, constraints are systematic, right? They're so you can't end an English word with a lax vowel, I think. So we can't say café. So even though it's a French word, we say cafe. And that's why we can't say Jose, we say Jose or Jose. Everything, we can't end with so it becomes a. We can't end in so it becomes e. We can't end in so it becomes oo, right? So these are constraints, and they're systematic, and they you're not just learning one word and how to pronounce it. You're learning a system that applies to a whole class of words.
It allows you to build upon things, you
Yeah.
know, like, yeah, like I start, you know, I get into the vowel sounds and we cover the ah sound pretty, you know, in depth, because you can go use that. It's quite versatile, you know, as you know, like the A spelling, O spelling, AU, it's all over the place. And then that gives you a great foundation to start exploring all the different, you know, just vowel variations, everything that there is there to develop. But yeah, you've got to be following a system. Otherwise, you're just randomly, otherwise, you're being reactionary, really, right? It's like whack-a-mole. Like you're constantly just going to be going after something new. But with a system, you've got reinforced training. Like, everything builds upon each other. You can't move forward. You can't get here unless you've gotten here, you know?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Very cool. Well, speaking of systems, and I mean, you've dropped so much knowledge today, like life-changing stuff, but I'd love to hear, do you have any final words of wisdom to share? Any final tips to send people off with that might, you know, give them a 1% boost on their own English?
Well, I'd say well, definitely practice. Yeah, practice is key, but also know where to make the sound. So like we were just talking about systems. It's not enough to know like this particular word. You need it's much more helpful to know that this word functions the same way as a bunch of words. And one way to I recommend when practicing that you first try to guess where these sounds are and check your check whether you're correct, check the dictionary to see if you are actually saying if that word actually has the sound that you think it does. Like do some conceptual knowledge, like does this actually function the way you think it does, and then actually say it. Because it's not enough to know how to create the sound. You also need to know where to create the sound.